The restaurant fell silent for Jason Carter the moment he stepped through the glass doors. He wasn't the kind of man who noticed people staring anymore. 5 years of raising his 8-year-old daughter alone had taught him to ignore whispers, judgment, and sympathy. He had survived sleepless nights, hospital visits, unpaid bills, and birthdays where he smiled for his little girl while quietly grieving the life he had lost. A blind date was the last thing he wanted. If his best friend, Melissa, hadn't begged him for weeks, he would never have agreed. Just one dinner, she had insisted. My sister Emily is kind, funny, and she understands what real life looks like. Jason had finally surrendered, promising himself he would stay for 30 minutes, be polite, and leave. But the second he spotted the reserved table in the center of the restaurant, every plan he had made shattered into pieces. Sitting across from the beautiful woman Melissa had described was someone he recognized instantly. His boss. Victoria Reynolds. The powerful CEO who had spent the last year evaluating every move he made at work. The woman whose approval could decide whether he earned the promotion that would finally give his daughter the future she deserved. She looked up, met his eyes, and froze just as completely as he did. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them understood why the other was there. Around them, conversations continued, waiters carried plates across the room, glasses clinked together, but for Jason the world had stopped moving. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear himself think. Then Victoria slowly stood, folded her napkin onto the table, and asked the question that made every person nearby glance toward them. Jason, what are you doing here? Before he could answer, Emily turned in her chair, smiling warmly, completely unaware of the tension surrounding them. Oh good, you're finally here. Melissa said you'd probably be nervous. Jason forced a smile that felt painfully fake. I think there's been some misunderstanding. Emily laughed softly. Not at all. You're Jason, right? Melissa's friend? Jason nodded, but his eyes never left Victoria's confused expression. Victoria looked from Emily to Jason several times before finally asking, wait, you're the blind date? Emily blinked. Yes, why? Victoria closed her eyes for a brief second as if trying to process something impossible. Because this is my dinner reservation. The table fell into awkward silence. Emily looked confused. Jason looked embarrassed. Victoria looked irritated. Then a familiar voice echoed from behind them. Surprise. Melissa walked toward the table wearing the biggest grin imaginable. Okay, nobody panic before I explain. Jason sighed deeply. Melissa, what did you do? She pulled out another chair and sat down like everything was perfectly normal. Relax. Emily is my sister, and Victoria is my sister's boss. They were already having dinner tonight, so I thought instead of making everyone go to different restaurants, why not combine everything into one dinner? Jason stared at her in disbelief. You thought introducing me to your sister, while my CEO was sitting at the same table, was a good idea? Melissa's smile slowly disappeared. When you say it out loud, it sounds worse. Even Victoria couldn't stop herself from laughing quietly. It was the first genuine laugh Jason had ever heard from her. At the office she was known for being calm, professional, and impossible to impress. Seeing her laugh felt strangely human. Emily shook her head. Melissa, this has to be the worst surprise in history. Or the best, Melissa replied hopefully. Nobody agreed. Dinner began with painful silence. Jason focused on his water glass while wondering whether he should leave before making things even more uncomfortable. Victoria seemed equally unsure, checking her phone more than usual. Emily attempted small talk that died within seconds. Finally Victoria placed her phone face down and looked directly at Jason. Since we're already here, perhaps we should pretend this isn't the strangest dinner either of us has ever attended. Jason smiled nervously. That would definitely help. The conversation slowly became easier. Emily asked about Jason's daughter, Lily, and his entire face changed. The tired, cautious employee disappeared, replaced by a proud father who could spend hours talking about school projects, soccer practice, bedtime stories, and pancakes every Saturday morning. Victoria listened quietly. She had never seen this version of him. At work Jason was dependable but reserved, always finishing projects early before rushing home exactly at 5 o'clock. Some managers assumed he lacked ambition because he never stayed late. Hearing him describe reading fairy tales every evening and refusing overtime simply because he promised his daughter dinner together changed something inside her. She realized she had judged him without knowing the reason behind his choices. Meanwhile Jason noticed something unexpected about Victoria. Away from the office she wasn't intimidating at all. She smiled easily, joked with Emily, thanked every waiter by name, and even admitted she burned toast almost every morning because she was terrible at cooking. The image he had built of the cold executive slowly disappeared. As dessert arrived, Jason's phone suddenly rang. The cheerful atmosphere vanished instantly. He looked at the screen and stood up without hesitation. "I'm sorry. I have to take this." He answered with concern already visible on his face. "Hello." His expression changed within seconds. "Is she okay?" "I'm on my way." He hung up and grabbed his jacket. Emily immediately asked, "What happened?" Jason swallowed hard. "My daughter had an asthma attack at her babysitter's house. They're taking her to the hospital." Without thinking, Victoria stood as well. "I'll drive you." Jason looked surprised. "You don't have to. I'm not asking." Her voice was calm but firm. "Traffic is terrible tonight, and my car is parked right outside." Emily handed Jason his keys while Melissa whispered, "Go." Minutes later they were speeding through the city streets in silence. Jason stared through the windshield, his hands shaking. Victoria kept her eyes on the road, driving with complete focus. After several minutes she finally spoke. "She's going to be okay." Jason nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "She's all I have." Victoria glanced at him for only a second before looking back at the road. "Then let's make sure you get to her as fast as possible." Neither of them realized that the unexpected dinner neither had wanted had just become the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. The emergency room doors slid open just as Victoria parked outside the hospital. Jason didn't wait for the car to come to a complete stop before rushing inside. His heart pounded with every step until he spotted Lily sitting upright on a hospital bed, wearing a small oxygen mask. The moment she saw her father, her frightened eyes lit up. "Daddy," she called weakly. Jason crossed the room in seconds, wrapped his arms around her, and kissed the top of her head. "I'm here, sweetheart. Everything's okay now." The doctor explained that the attack had been serious but was under control because the babysitter had acted quickly. Jason thanked the doctor repeatedly, relief washing over him so strongly that he had to sit down. Only then did he notice Victoria standing quietly near the doorway, giving them space. Lily peeked around her father and smiled. "Who's she?" Jason hesitated before answering. "She's my boss." Lily giggled. "She doesn't look scary." Victoria laughed softly. "I promise I'm not scary all the time." Lily removed her oxygen mask for a moment and whispered, "Daddy says only nice people help others. Thank you for bringing him." Those simple words caught Victoria completely off guard. She smiled, but her eyes glistened. "You're very welcome." After Lily was discharged a few hours later, Jason insisted on taking a taxi home, but Victoria shook her head. "It's almost midnight. Let me drive you both." During the ride, Lily fell asleep against her father's shoulder. Victoria glanced at them through the rearview mirror and realized she had never seen such quiet devotion. Jason never looked at his phone. He never complained about the long day or the missed dinner. Every bit of his attention remained on his daughter. It reminded Victoria of something she hadn't felt in years, a longing for a family she had sacrificed while climbing the corporate ladder. The following Monday, Jason expected awkwardness at work. Instead, Victoria called him into her office. He stood nervously, assuming she wanted to discuss the strange dinner. She surprised him by saying, "I've been reviewing employee schedules. Starting next month, parents with young children can choose flexible hours without affecting promotion opportunities." Jason looked stunned. "You're changing company policy?" Victoria nodded. "Good employees shouldn't have to choose between work and their families." Jason realized the hospital night had changed more than either of them expected. News of the new policy spread quickly through the company. Employees who had quietly struggled for years thanked Victoria, and many privately thanked Jason too, though few knew he had inspired the decision. Respect between Jason and Victoria grew naturally. They worked together more often, shared ideas, and discovered they made an excellent team. Outside the office they remained careful, keeping everything professional, but the walls between them slowly disappeared. A few weeks later Melissa invited everyone to another dinner. This time she jokingly promised there would be no surprise guests. Emily laughed the hardest. During dessert she leaned toward Jason and smiled. "Can I tell you something honestly?" Jason nodded. "When Melissa tried to set us up, I thought we might be a good match. But after watching you and Victoria these past few weeks, I think life had a different plan." Jason nearly dropped his fork. Across the table Victoria looked equally surprised. Emily continued smiling. "Sometimes the right person isn't the one we expect. It's the one who shows up when life gets difficult." Neither Jason nor Victoria answered immediately, but neither denied it either. Months passed. Lily recovered completely and even insisted on baking cookies for Miss Victoria, although most of them came out slightly burned. Victoria accepted every cookie with a smile, telling Lily they were the best she'd ever tasted. Jason watched the two of them laugh together in his kitchen and felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since losing his wife years earlier: hope. One rainy evening, after finishing a community charity event sponsored by the company, Jason walked Victoria to her car. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Finally Victoria broke the silence. "You know, if Melissa hadn't accidentally ruined that blind date." Jason smiled. "It wasn't ruined. It just turned into something neither of us expected." Victoria laughed. "That's true." Jason took a deep breath. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Victoria raised an eyebrow playfully. "Just the two of us this time?" He nodded. "No sisters. No friends. No surprises." She smiled brighter than he had ever seen before. "I'd love that." A year later, the same restaurant reserved the very same table where everything had begun. This time there was no confusion, no awkward silence, and no unexpected interruptions. Lily sat happily between Jason and Victoria, proudly announcing to the waiter, "This is our favorite restaurant because this is where my family started." Jason looked at Victoria, who reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive disguised as embarrassing mistakes. A blind date that should have been a disaster became the beginning of a love built on trust, compassion, and second chances. Jason had walked into that restaurant believing he was simply keeping a promise to a friend. He walked out with something he never thought he would find again: the possibility of a new future. As they left the restaurant together, Melissa called after them with a grin. "See? I told you my idea wasn't completely terrible." Everyone laughed because, in the end, even the biggest misunderstandings can become the first chapter of the happiest stories. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story of love, family, and second chances, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories every week. Your support helps us bring many more unforgettable stories to life.